Hi there. This is Dean Walker from Living Resilience Deep Academy and also the Poetry of Predicament podcast. And I'm going to be speaking to two different audiences in this particular episode. One audience is the folks who have signed up for the online introductory course that I'm offering called Resilience. It's the second of two introductory video series from this Deep Academy program on the website. I'm very, very happy to be offering this, and it's not a moment too soon. This series of online video learning series. And so these two introductions, I have had great value in producing them. I hope that the folks who have signed up and have engaged with it have found them valuable. And I particularly hope that they found it valuable enough to then join us for a longer term, for more of these series, and to be able to explore in depth the particular areas of interest and of focus for them as we all face human-caused collapse of Earth and human systems. That's the nature of this work. So in this particular series, this particular part of the audience that I'm putting this together for, this will be section 4, the final section of this resilience series. And so that's one part of the audience. The other part of the audience for this particular piece is the folks at the Poetry of Predicament podcast who watch from time to time in this podcast. And I mean this as an update for really both audiences of how I've been doing, my loved ones and myself, how we've been doing as we live in Southern Oregon. And this is being recorded in September of 2020, which anyone in front of a TV, and especially in the USA, is well aware that the entire west coast of the USA is in flames. And this is an extraordinarily charged year, even without any of the fires that are going on, you know, in terms of justice issues, in terms of COVID-19, and in terms of authoritarian and extraordinarily corrupt politics, and on the list goes. So let's go right to this update. Very pleased to let you all know that I, Dean Walker, and my sweetheart Heather, and my dog, our dog Bo, we're all very well. We were evacuated for a couple of days out of our apartment in Medford, Oregon. And we were thrilled to be able to be back 2 days later to our apartment being in great shape. We were untouched by the fire. The fire came within approximately a half mile of our apartment. And we are thrilled at the first responders and the community rallying the way it has. And we're so very thankful to be back in our home. I will be playing a number of different video clips while I read a rather long piece in the second part of this session. And those clips are going to include aerial and drive-by clips of the devastation in nearby towns of Phoenix and Talent here in the Rogue Valley in what has become the what's being called the Almeda Fire. So before we get to the reading that I'm talking about and those video clips playing while I'm reading, I'd like to just do a recap for the folks who are here because they're involved with this online video learning series on resilience. A brief recap, and particularly to let you all know that all of you folks who are not involved with that video learning series, to make this an invitation, please come join in, come check it out and see if it's the kind of community of practice and of learning together that might be of interest to you, might be useful skills and capacities, especially in these extraordinary times. So episode 1 of this series on resilience was basically completely rewritten and reproduced after COVID-19 onset. I had completed this series roughly a year ago in 2019 and had to completely rewrite it and most of the other series that I had completed because of how we showed up as a nation. I don't like having such an America-centered focus in these video learning series, but it's really hard to avoid just the extraordinary poor performance and remarkably charged and corrosively corrupt governmental and corporate expressions that have been going on, not to mention very, very disturbing cultural trends that have been going on and appear to be getting more and more volatile as we approach the election of our president in November. So in any case, the first section of this resilience series, you will recall, was basically an overview of how anti-resilient the USA had become, and really has been all along. The incredible fragility of our system, our predatory capitalist system, and the corrosively corrupt government and corporate powers that underpin our system. They really showed their true colors as the COVID-19 crisis unfolded. That has continued to explode as the responses to justice issues has also been added to the stack of current issues in the USA. And now, of course, we have the fires and multiple hurricanes showing up on the East Coast as well. It's just a remarkable time. So again, section 1 was just a recap of how how anti-resilient we've become. And it's hard to overstate how completely unprepared we are for the scale of challenges and predicaments that have long been predicted in the collapse-aware community, but for the rest of us who are still willfully ignorant to some degree, we're being smacked over the head, so to speak, by the reality of how completely ignorant of resilience skills we collectively are. So section 2 of this resilience series was an introduction to as good as it's gotten in terms of what skills, what agencies are there to call on, what skills are there to learn with regard to resilience, at least on a first aid level. Meaning, there are teams that go into a city that's been clobbered by a hurricane, where people are sleeping together as their homes and neighborhoods have been flooded out, and they're sleeping together in a high school gym. And as people are trying to sort out how to make sense of all this and what how to step forward out of this incredible disaster. There are people that, as part of the first responders, they'll come in and teach these immediate first aid level skills at being more resilient in the moment. That includes ways to become more present in our body, because a lot of us can be dissociative. We can just check out in an emergency situation. We're overwhelmed and we don't know what else to do. And so we often, many people will just check out and become less conscious. So many of the skills that at the first aid level for resilience skills, self-regulation and co-regulation skills, meaning the kind of skills that allow us to be more facile at shifting volitionally our state of being, to going from that spun out, completely overwhelmed feeling and not present in our body, not to mention we're not present to our loved ones in that same emergency situation, how to volitionally shift back to a preferred state of being, even in the midst of all this stuff going on. So the first aid level of self-regulation, co-regulation, and resilience skills, that's what section 2 of the resilience series in this series was about. So segment 3 of this series was, if by any chance you have any normalcy in your life, you're not sleeping in the gym, you're still living in your home, you're still going to work, you still have some amount of normalcy in your life, what are the kind of skills that you could start to chip away at, you could start to learn on a day by day, little by little basis that could be tremendously valuable if and when your community, your family, and so on are hit with some sort of major stressor? You know, this could also be, it's not just natural disasters. You know, we have millions of people who are on the threshold of being evicted from their homes, either renting or owning their homes. That's no small stressor in anyone's life. This is meant to be a preparation for that. If again, people have any amount of normalcy, any spare time, so to speak, there are some resources in this 3rd chapter of the resilience series that is suggesting that kind of practice, that kind of material to study and to integrate into your life skills that could conceivably expand your capacity to be present in the face of the next stressor, whatever it may be. So from anti-resilience to resilience skills at the first aid level, and then this 3rd chapter is the introduction of resilience skills that take some work, that take some preparation, that take some study and integration and practice to really get them into your life. That's the 3rd chapter that you'll recall. Again, remembering that there are some folks who are watching this who have been indeed engaging with these various chapters in the resilience series. This is meant to be an introduction to the 4th and final chapter in this resilience series. It is the bridge where people will either choose to use this as a bridge to further study, engagement, and practice in this community of practice with Living Resilience and Deep Academy and all the different programs that we offer and ways of being together with kindred spirits on, you know, online and hopefully eventually in person again. That's one of the purposes of this chapter, this final chapter in the resilience series, is to see if you enjoy this and in finding value and so on, if you'll then continue with us, or if you'll step away and pursue your own path, whatever that might be. Absolutely fine and no pressure either way. But this is meant to be a clear kind of line of demarcation and an invitation for you to do that if you wanted to. It is also meant to be an introduction to what we call the transformative level of these basic resilience skills. This transformative level is the next formative level above the level 3, which I just mentioned is, you know, if you have some time at home and you can take on these basic practices and so on, that over time, you know, a few months, even weeks and months, you can really develop some expanded capacity and practice and skills. And at this 4th level, you would have been engaged in quite a bit of that level 3 practice, and now really ready to go to the next level. And this is often best done, pieces of it are best done with others. This is an extraordinary level of transformative level of practice, facing larger and larger stressors in life. These are also often overlapping with what have been known in the wisdom traditions, the various spiritual traditions, those who have gone to an extraordinary length in these various spiritual or wisdom traditions for thousands of years. The people who have really taken on extraordinary level of practice to connect at a psychospiritual level with inner resources. This is kind of a taste of that. This is not for everybody. Just like, truthfully, I've been in this kind of training world for quite some time, and it's actually quite amazing to me that there are the vast majority of people are now and will be till the day they die in that anti-resilient level back at level 1. That's just the way our world works. They're too busy. They're not interested in learning these skills. Like, what do I need this for? Until, of course, it's something really big comes and smacks them, like these fires, or losing your job, or losing your home, and so on, which of course takes us to level 2, which again, if you haven't gleaned any of this type of skills over the years you've been alive, the best you've got is trying to learn things on the fly as you're gathered together, in sleeping together in the gym, and trying to be present in the face of undoubtedly a horrific natural disaster and so on. What I've seen, and what those who have been in both of these introductory series will know very well, there's this one self-assessment that we use in this work from a guy named Paul Chafurka, where he talks about people being on one end of the spectrum, dead asleep. I know it's not very complimentary, but truthfully, the vast majority of our population here in the US and around the world are functionally dead asleep. They're not aware of these issues, and they certainly are unaware of the kind of resilience skills that I'm talking about. As a person might progress through Paul Chafurka's levels of awareness, getting all the way to the highest level he talks about, which is seeing the world as an interconnection of systems, human systems and earth systems intertwined, and all of those systems being in a state of predicament at this time. There are going to be fewer and fewer people at each level progressing through Chafurka's 5 different levels. So again, my apologies to people for whom this is new. If you're just watching this and don't quite get it, we'll soon be moving on to something that will make sense to anyone from any background here. So please bear with. What I'm trying to get at is that there will be a relatively small number of people who will find a comfortable fit with the gravitas and the really intensity of this work, because we're committed to really telling it like it is, what's going on in the world, and then bringing the most functional, accessible tools and practices we can possibly find to come together as kindred spirits in a meeting of support and mutual encouragement to learn and integrate these important skills. So that's the invitation. That's what has gotten us here, is going through these 3 different chapters in the Resilience series, landing here. And for those who are involved with these series, this is going to be, by the end of this, you'll know, yeah, either yes, I absolutely want to be building these skills and connecting with these kindred spirits and moving forward. Good, great, thank you. We welcome you and look forward to you being here. And for those who choose a different path, our deepest respect to you. These are troubling times, challenging times, and we wish you all the best in whatever your path might be. So in just a moment, I'm going to be reading something that is just a remarkable summary of one person's view of the situation that we're in now. It is very much aligned with my experience, especially having just evacuated my home after a complete and utter firestorm in our community, and then just taking a look at the news daily and just seeing the entire West Coast is lit up, and the political situation is toxic and lit up, and the number of existential level and deeply disturbing issues that are facing us all. It's a time to shift gears, I would say, and certainly this person that I'm about to read to you from also feels that this is long past due, a time to engage our own personal practices and our own intention to reach out and connect with other people in a way we've needed to do for a long time. That to me is one of the callings of these times. So I'm going to look forward to the author of this particular article that I'm going to read. His name is Umair Haque, and he's a Medium author, an author who posts on the website Medium. And the title of this particular essay is 2020 is the year climate change is becoming terrifyingly real. Subtitle is, "This is just the beginning of what a world of climate catastrophe looks like." Again, this is Umair Haque, and he posted this on September 13th here in 2020. And I will be, as I mentioned before, I'll be posting a number of clips instead of you having to just watch me read this. I'll also be including the link to his article in the show notes so you can read it for yourself. I'd recommend subscribing to him highly. He's an extraordinary author in these times. So this is the best way I can describe it is an essay that lays out an appropriate level of gravitas and sobriety in the face of what's going on. So thank you for watching this episode, and if you're staying with it, thank you for staying with it. These are extraordinary words for extraordinary times, and I'm hoping that some number of you will feel an affinity for this particular way of framing, of looking at this perspective of how we can see the world that we're living in. And again, hopefully you will be interested in joining us for this level of engagement with the world that we're living in, and also finding a way to make that an extraordinarily supportive and really love-filled experience of support with one another. So without further ado, Umair Haque. Over the last 12 months or so, climate change has become terrifyingly real. The entire west coast of America's on fire. The skies in California are crimson, just like those in Australia, as the year began. 2020 is the year that the world finally learned the hard way. Climate change is no joke. It is a series of catastrophes, the likes of which the human race has never yet seen. Climate change isn't just a change in the climate, it's a transformation in the geographical and temporal world against human habitability. The seasons are changing. Can we really call this year's summer in California that? Can we really call it summer? Does that word really do it justice when record high temperatures threaten power grids and human safety? Is what used to be called fire season, be cautious, stay safe, something more like an inferno which people simply have to flee from? So too, what used to be cities and towns and regions are now becoming fire and flood belts. If this is what fire season is in 2020, how much worse will it be in 2025? What if, as there's every reason to believe, every summer in places like California and Australia, mega fires are simply the new normal? What happens then? One answer is that human habitability changes fast. 500,000 people in Oregon were just evacuated. How many of those people will come back and stay? If this is what they now face year in and year out, the short answer is that climate change is making swaths of the world uninhabitable. It is happening in a paradoxical, baffling way. Faster than we think, but slower than we can really believe, yet right before our disbelieving eyes. Wait, California can't really be becoming unlivable, can it? LOL, no way, it's California. They'll find a way to what? Stop massive walls of fire from incinerating everything in sight? We are watching a planet now being transformed into a place that is not fit for human habitation, except at its edges and margins. There's a kind of poetic justice in that. Climate change is anthropogenic, they say. We caused it. It's more accurate to say that American-style capitalism caused climate change because it makes corporations and funds pay no price for literally turning the skies blood red. And there it is, the economic machine that's destroying the world, still chugging away. Despite emissions dropping drastically during lockdowns, 2020 has still marked the highest year yet for the world's CO2 levels. This climate catastrophe now unfolding before our bewildered eyes, the truth is that it's just the beginning. The world's only hit about 1 to 1.5 degrees of warming so far. It doesn't sound like much, and that's probably why, so far, we as a world, and especially nations like America, didn't take it nearly seriously enough. People think of the thermostats in their homes and say, 1.5 degrees, give me a break. What's the big deal? Now we know the big deal. 1.5 degrees is enough to begin doing things like changing the seasons, turning summer into an inferno, making even the world's most prosperous regions fire belts, causing mass evacuations, and producing phenomena we can't deal with, like megafires. And yet the best estimates are that somewhere between 3 to 4 degrees of warming are on the way, fast, by 2050 maybe. What kind of world are we talking about then? At 3 degrees, places like California and probably America's entire West Coast become flatly uninhabitable, except by the most diehard. Summer is megafire season. Everything gets incinerated over and over again, 3 to 6 months of the year. Food chains and ecosystems simply implode because, well, who can survive being burned alive year after year? Now expand that to a whole world. California is one of America's agricultural powerhouses. Now it can't generate all that produce. This is, again, he's speaking about the imagined future of 3 to 4 C temperature rise by 2050. Suddenly prices skyrocket and Americans are going hungry. But that, to tell the truth, is a minor effect. What happens as an entire coast burns? Insurance companies go broke, banks collapse, the businesses they support then go bust. Massive waves of unemployment spread out across the whole economy. Welcome to the age of climate depression. We're already entering it. Sure, Facebook can move its headquarters to somewhere safer, but the rest of everyone, all those millions, bang, they now have to be supported by an economy that's already spiraling into depression. The next stage of a climate depression is that the costs of caring for millions of displaced people, there are already 500,000 in Oregon alone, simply cause the public purse to dry up. And there goes everyone else's healthcare, retirement, schools, and so forth. Society begins to fracture and break apart. People blame the climate refugees, even the internal ones, for wrecking their still safe cities and towns. Authoritarian politics take hold, and the vicious cycle from depression to poverty to political implosion is complete. And that's just America. Go ahead and ponder for a moment how a world is going to feed itself when its bread baskets have become fire belts. Go ahead and consider how fresh, breathable air is going to become a luxury. Think about what happens when decent food and air become things only the rich can have. Politics turns fascist. Violence rules. A once stable world really spins out of control. This is just the warm-up, pun fully intended. At 4 degrees, things get way, way more apocalyptic. That's when sea levels rise in earnest. That means that while some coasts become fire belts, the rest of them begin to drown. And I don't mean the way Miami is. I mean the equivalent of a massive hurricane hitting every single day. Walls of water pouring down Manhattan streets, London living behind dikes, much of the world beginning to head for high ground. What happens then when, say, easily 2 to 3 billion people are fleeing megastorms, megafires, and rising seas for their lives? You can see how the evacuation of one American state has made global news. Now imagine what happens when most of South India or South China or the Middle East become unlivable. Consider what happens when the idea that people once lived in California is a distant memory because it's sliding into the sea when it's not being incinerated. Now the real border of human habitability stops at maybe Idaho, in the West anyways. In the East, Manhattan's now really an island, and Washington, D.C. became one too, both protected by massive barriers. But the continental border has shrunk 100 miles inland, maybe 200. And as it did, massive human flight, depression, political chaos, and mass death all ensued. Again, he's talking about the imagined 4C temperature rise by 2050. He goes on, at 4 degrees, our civilization simply collapses almost overnight. Things like functioning power grids and water systems are luxuries, and the systems which depend on them, healthcare, hospitals, schools, offices, they're all stopped working too. They barely function, and that's for the rich and their enclaves. For everyone else, life is just a bitter, brutal battle for survival, a nomadic one. The border of human habitability is shrinking, turning inwards by a mile, 10 miles a year. The megafires hit this town. The megafloods reached this far. The sea is coming this close. And people have to pack up and leave year after year. The idea of stability is geotemporally, economically, and socially impossible. The world's rich middle classes are now impoverished nomads fleeing from the violence of a planet on fire. And the world's poor, well, they're just dying because they don't even have that choice. Now, the question is going to arise, especially from Americans. My God, tell me what to do about all this. The thing that we have to do, I'll come back to you. As a human race is simple, unprecedented, and maybe impossible. We have to come together to fight for the future of life on this planet, which includes us. In concrete terms, that means we need to begin the greatest wave of investment in human history. We need to invest in everything from adaptation, literal firewalls, flood barriers, and so forth, to mitigation, which means energy grids, green construction, and clean energy. We need to invent the economic and financial mechanisms to make it all possible. Things like a Green New Deal, the triple bottom line, and balance sheets of real wealth, including natural capital. We need to invest at a scale that has never, ever been seen in human history. How much am I talking? My estimate is about 20 trillion per year. That's the size of the American economy, by the way. It's a tremendous number, and that's how much it will cost to really begin creating a future and a planet that is fit for life again, instead of spiraling into fire, flood, plague, and chaos. That's what it will take to create a world of clean energy grids, green construction, breathable air, drinkable water, and so on. What we are doing so far is not working, except in tiny, tiny pockets of the world. Likewise, in gentle Europe, perhaps. But the rest of the world is now at grave, grave risk. There's not a country on earth that will not be devastated by climate change, except the geographically privileged, like perhaps Canada. Hot places will become infernos. Coastal places will drown. Arid places will become alien planets. Human life will cease to beat with the pulses and rhythms of civilization. Everything from employment to air and water will become luxuries, and there will be a wave of mass death that will make COVID look paltry and kind. That is what we, the big we, humanity, need to do. Invest like never before at a speed that we have never done before. We have a decade, if that, to begin this project of fighting for the future. If we don't do it, it's a virtual certainty that we will hit at least 4 degrees C of temperature rise, which is game over. So our window is now. That brings me to you. What can you do? There are many things you can do. Perhaps you own a small business. You can work to make it carbon neutral, friendly to life, sustainable and green and clean and ethical and humane. As a consumer in this broken system we are all trapped in, you can still make better choices. You can stop giving your money to terrible corporations who pollute the planet. You can stop supporting factory farming and even eat less meat. You can be a little more mindful and aware of what impact the money you spend really has. Those acts may seem tiny. They're not. We are now in a fight for the future of life as we know it on the planet, which includes us. Nothing you do is irrelevant. However you choose to fight this battle is better than not fighting it at all. A million tiny changes like that really can change the behavior of bad actors, from corporations to hedge funds. They can change social attitudes and cultural mores. Do not give in to despair and fatalism. You are in this fight already. The only question is whether you know it or not. That brings me to the thing that you can really do. It is the simplest and most powerful action of all. You can educate yourself about all of the above, everything we've talked about in this paper so far, how dire and desperate the situation really is, how much investment is really required. Do you know what happens at 3 degrees, at 4, at 5? My bet is that you don't, though maybe you can make some idle guesses. But you don't really know. You are still climate illiterate, in other words. And the reasons you don't know, the reason you are still climate illiterate is that, well, our intellectual and leadership class has failed at creating a civilized public sphere. Consider that the New York Times still has a columnist who denies climate change while the entire West Coast burns. Consider that Australia has a prime minister who denied that climate change had anything to do with the devastating bushfire season of 2019. Is it any surprise both of these nations were badly unprepared for megafires? Is it any surprise that most Americans are confused about climate change when nobody really educates them about it? You won't learn the truth about what is heading our way on CNN or in the New York Times, and certainly not on faux news, on Fox News. The self-professed good guys are too busy debating simple truth or sugarcoating them or dumbing them down. Hence, California and Oregon were totally unprepared for a journey into climate apocalypse, even though summers becoming infernos is exactly what was predicted at this degree of warming over and over again. Educate yourself. And I mean this gently and supportively. Stop asking people like me what to do. Do you understand how the globe's ecosystems hang together? Can you name the world's 10 great ecologies? Probably not. You remain climate illiterate. And while it's not your fault, it is your responsibility. If you stay illiterate, though, you will be 3 things. 1, powerless. 2, ignorant. And 3, a sitting duck. We remain badly ignorant of this world we are heading into, its risks, the catastrophes which await us in the era of apocalypse we have unleashed. So educate yourself, take some responsibility, be an adult, read a dozen books, read 100, read 100 reports, 1,000. Don't you have better things to do than Netflix and chill your life away? Do you really want to be sitting duck for the fire and the flood? You should be learning about this stuff as much as you can, as fast as you can. That is what it means to be mature, to be brave, to step up to the challenge of now, so that you can shield and protect your family, your loved ones, your society, all of humanity. Learn about what is coming. Don't remain ignorant, which is precisely, sadly, the way the system wants you, so that you stay fatalistic, weary, too powerless and unenlightened to change a damn thing. We are now in a fight for the future of life as we know it on this planet. You are in this fight. The only question is whether you know it yet. If you don't, then, like so many before you, you might just be cannon fodder. So let me say it again. Instead of asking what to do, educate yourself. This is not a drill. I don't know if we can win the fight for the future, but I do know that we had better damn well try. because this is the closest thing to the apocalypse human beings have ever experienced. Haven't you already figured that out? Suddenly, watching the sky over San Francisco turn the color of blood? It's easy to bury your head in the sand and only look up when the flames or the flood are about 10 feet away. But by then, it's usually far, far too late. Umair Haque, Medium Magazine, September 2020. So thank you for listening. I was going to write something, and something that reflected the mixture of deep grief and deep roiling anger inside of me as I've been experiencing the effects of the firestorm in my particular area. And I somehow wanted to have it be able to bridge into this work that I'm doing with Living Resilience Deep Academy, with providing support and resources for people who are bravely facing human-caused collapse of Earth and human systems. And Umair basically said it far better than I could. So thank you for sitting through that. And I hope that whether or not you've already experienced any of the Deep Academy learning series or the support sessions that we have on a regular basis to help us all bond more together and learn from each other on this path. Whether you've experienced any of this or not, I hope you will consider joining us for the community of practice that's really in the background of all of this work. This is a time to find your people one way or the other. This is a time to really decide, really choose what is your calling in the face of these extraordinary times. If you don't get that calling from the clarity and gravitas of Umair Haque's writing, I don't know what's going to bring it to you. And again, whatever your choice in this time, whether you agree with Umair's and perhaps my point of view about the gravitas of this moment or not, whatever you see out on the horizon, I sincerely wish you all the best as you step forward in your own way, find your own truth of your own path. And if you happen to feel some affinity with the path of this Living Resilience Deep Academy work, this community of practice, we welcome you with open arms and look forward to whatever your contribution is that you bring, whatever calling you are motivated by. So look forward to seeing you in perhaps the next Safe Circle gathering, which we have every Tuesday night. And the link for that is also in the show notes, so that you, if you're interested, you can sign up to receive the Zoom invitations every week. And of course, most importantly, the links to sign up for these introductory sessions of the Deep Academy learning series are also in the show notes. My best wishes to all of us, and particularly to the first responders all up and down the West Coast, the firefighters just doing impossibly brave and difficult work. I have deep thanks and deep gratitude in my heart for all the work that they're doing. And before that, seems like a distant memory now, is the still very present, overworked and underappreciated and underpaid first responders and medical staff across the country and around the world that are dealing with the COVID-19 situation going on, and what are unfortunately called essential workers, but we don't pay them that way. We don't treat them that way. But my heart goes out to you as well, and my deep thanks for the work that you're doing uh, for a mostly ungrateful population, a population that's still willing to have you not have health care, a population that's still willing to pay you 1970s level minimum wage. Um, and for that, I am deeply grieving and committed to protesting and to being engaged in activism to bring those standards up. Um, and in the face of all that we are all facing, I wish us the warmest blessings of people waking up together and listening to their own hearts for what is the calling and what is most important to each of us in these challenging times. Again, thanks for listening. Bye for now.